Anyone, what are some stories you have wanted to tell people but haven't had the right Ask Credit question to answer? Not necessarily that I wanted to tell, more of I was reminded of something today that I did many years ago. When I was in my second year of college, my dad was selling the house he and I lived in because he was getting remarried. One of his wife's friends, her husband was an electrician and had to do some work to fix some minor code violations for sale. This was the first time I met this guy, never had met his wife. He had keys to the house and wasn't expecting me, so he was kind of surprised when I came home. He was with a woman who was helping him. I didn't think anything of it. Couple of days later in that break, my dad's wife and I were talking and she asked what I thought of this guy. I said he seemed to do a good job, but I thought his wife was pretty fun. I said I also thought his wife was named something else, and when I said that, my dad's wife's face went pale. Apparently his helper was a woman he was caught having an affair with years before and claimed he broke it off. I inadvertently revealed this and blew his cover. His wife left him and it was this whole big thing. Strangely, I was blamed by my dad's wife and this guy's daughter for ruining a whole family. The wife in the situation ended up falling off the wagon and eventually dying of cirrhosis. The daughter was fucked up and into weird shit and dropped out of high school 2 years later to move in with a 40-year-old at 17. All because I came home a day early for winter break in 2003. I have a demon-killing lawnmower. A while back I helped investigate a fire scene. The fire was pretty much confined to the basement, but the whole basement was damaged. Going through the debris, we found a lawnmower in the basement, which is very unusual. But in the lawnmower blades we found chunks of carpet and wood, which is even weirder. And then, just to add fuel to the fire, parts of the carpet and furniture in the basement looked like they'd been attacked with a lawnmower. The owner of the house had been arrested, but we didn't know why. It turns out the guy had been on a 3-day meth binge. He began to hallucinate heavily. He claimed demons were attacking him in his house. He somehow figured out they were coming from the basement, so he went down and started fighting them. He realized there were too many, so he went up to his garage and got the lawnmower and started mowing the demons as they came out of the basement floor. The demons, overpowered him and stopped his lawnmower from moving. He took the gas cap off and dumped the tank out and lit the whole basement on fire in an attempt to kill the demons. So I had to collect the lawnmower as evidence. And that is the story of how I ended up with a demon-killing lawnmower. When I was in high school I threw a party and a friend drunkenly put a hole in the wall right by the entrance. My parents would be back in a little over 24 hours. The day following the party I went to Home Depot and explained to the guy working there my situation. To which he basically told me, "Yeah dude, you don't have enough time to fix a hole in the wall after getting all the supplies." I figured I was good to go out with some friends for a while, come home and quickly fix the wall. I come home from being out around 10 p.m., giving me about 12 hours before my parents would come home. I fill up the hole with the mesh and sheetrock. Now it's all filled up and smooth, still wet and obviously a different color than the wall itself. I remembered that my mom painted the wall herself a few years back and there are still paint cans left over in the basement. After grabbing a can that matched the color of the wall I got ready to cover the spot. The second I painted onto the wall I immediately noticed the paint color was too dark. It's the same color but a much darker shade, so my mom must have thought it was too dark and added white to lighten the color. So, I go back to the basement for white paint. I spend the next few hours trying to find the right shade that my mom used so once painted the wall would match in color with the surrounding walls. After an eternity I finally get the right color. It's 3 to 4 a.m. at this point and I paint the whole wall. Once I'm done the wall looks great, you can't even tell there was ever a hole. My next obvious issue is the smell of paint. One step into the house and my parents would immediately know something isn't right, it reeks of paint. That's when I remembered seeing a can of blue paint in the basement. I grab the blue paint and a poster board used from a school project and make a sign saying "Welcome Home." I then hang the sign in the same room as the wet wall, on an opposite wall to draw attention there and off the painted wall. I purposely leave the can of blue paint there on the floor with the lid off to help sell the reason for the strong smell of paint. Then I went to bed, exhausted and with only a few hours to spare. I woke up when they arrived to greet them / see if I was gonna get busted or not. My plan worked like a charm. I got away with it. They love the welcome home sign. I know what you must be wondering, but what about the wet paint? There's no way it dried in time. You're right, it was 100% still wet when they arrived. I just prayed nobody would touch the wall. That's one of my stories I'm actually very proud of. That was over 10 years ago and I'm still just as proud today of that accomplishment as I was back then. I was chasing someone that stole from the bottle shop, liquor store, I was working at. She was probably about 16 years old. As I chased her, I was just about to catch her when she ran out into the road and got wiped out by a car. I kinda felt bad as I picked up the cans she dropped on the floor as she limped away. Ended up getting a phone call off the police asking if we had been robbed. I asked how he knew and he said someone called up claiming they had ran over someone fleeing the store. My aunt's African gray parrot talked incessantly, but mostly used cuss words and phrases her first husband taught it. She'd say something to it like, "How's Mr. Peter Parrot today?" And he'd reply with various things, like "stick it up your ass," or something worse. We never figured out why the parrot retained everything her former husband taught it, but nothing she said. There was a guy called Nathan that used to go to our school. He was pretty chill but had this thing where he would slide down the stairs on a wet floor sign. One time he literally made a slip and slide by flooding the toilets until water flowed down the stairs and slid down on the wet floor sign. Back when schools did not have Wi-Fi, it still has not even this time third world country, I downloaded a massive amount of porn and hentai. I hid it in the desktop using the hide feature and became a porn kingpin in school. So basically I passed porn and hentai files through Bluetooth and asked money for it. Easy lunch money. Never caught either. When I was 12 to 13 years old, I was really into fishing. I mean to the point where I was reading in Fisherman magazine, begging to go to Bass Pro Shop, and would even wake up really early on Saturdays because they would sometimes playing fishing infomercials at like 4 a.m. And of course every weekend I would drag my parents out to the forest preserve so I could fish. They weren't into it themselves, but they encouraged it because it kept me out of trouble and they got to enjoy some relaxation time. The little lake I liked fishing at did not rent boats, but it did have a dock for people with boats to use. Because we didn't have one, I would just fish off the dock on one of those foldable cloth chairs. It was nice, but I was mostly always catching small fish and felt that the bigger ones were out there in the middle of the lake out of my reach. Then one day we're at Kmart and we see this big inflatable raft on sale. I asked my dad if we could get it so we could take it out on the lake, and to my surprise he said yes. So, we go out that weekend and I'm super excited to finally get out on the lake. We inflate the raft, get our stuff in, followed by ourselves, and then pushed off from the dock. We row out to the middle of the lake and drop a little improvised anchor my dad came up with. He took a nap and I fished for about an hour. Didn't even get a bite, which was disappointing. We go back to the shore and I get back to fishing off of the dock and my dad starts grilling steak for some tacos. In order to dry the bottom so it wouldn't get nasty when we packed it up, we turned the raft over and left it out to dry in the sun. About 15 minutes later a park ranger rolls up on us as we are eating. He points to the raft and asks, "You guys aren't thinking of taking that out there, are you?" My dad and I give each other a wide-eyed look and then both give him a drawn-out, "No." The officer replies, "Well, that's good to hear, because I would have to write you a ticket for that. It's dangerous to have inflatables in that water because it could easily get punctured. Why don't you pack that up and I can be on my way?" So he stayed there and made sure we put it away and then left. We honestly had not even thought about how dangerous it could have been for us, especially with me fishing with sharp hooks. That ranger totally knew that we were out there. He just wanted to be nice and not write us a ticket and instead inform us about the dangers, which I thought was pretty cool of him. I was about 4. There was a bottle of super glue on the counter and I reached for, rubbed it on my hands, then rubbed my eye. It was then that my eye was super glued closed. It dried quickly, so when I got taken to hospital they had to cut it off as to not hurt me. Ever since then, nothing like super glue was left open or in my reach. One time I was at the store, buying party supplies for a Christmas Eve party. You can imagine the store was packed because it was Christmas time. I hate crowded stores. One thing I had to get for my mom was a pack of ginger ale cans. I went to the self-checkout and the sticker for the pack of cans was on the top of the pack. I awkwardly rolled the pack over on the scanner to scan the barcode and a single can fell out onto the floor of the store. As it hit the ground, a tiny hole busted open between the body of the can and the seam of the top of the can. A small pressurized stream of ginger ale was projecting out of the can as it began to roll away. Like a ginger ale sprinkler, it rolled down the alley of self-checkouts, misting all the Christmas Eve shoppers with ginger ale as the clerk had to chase it down the queue of people waiting to check out. It was quite embarrassing. My mother and her best friend, S, lost contact for about 10 years. One morning, unannounced, S showed up at her door. My mother was thrilled. They sat and had coffee, chatted for a couple hours. After a while S said, "Don't you want to ask me something?" My mother was surprised and said, "No. You look great." S said, "Yes, I'm well." Mom said, "I like your new haircut." S said, "Yes. I shaved my head." My mother nodded, confused. S said, "And I'm wearing sandals." And saffron. I'm a Buddhist nun? My mother had not noticed. When I was a kid there was a guy sat behind me in school and he was holding onto my arm and pulling it backwards, from like over my head, so I had my elbow in the air, and I was trying to pull back to get my arm free. Well, I had a pencil in the hand he was pulling backwards and my other hand on my desk. When he let go I stabbed myself on my left hand and the tip of the pencil broke and the lead from it is still inside my palm about 22 years later. You can still see the black dot inside my palm.